Welcome to the Thursday, October 24th Litchfield Budget Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Since 7:01 p.m. this evening, the Budget Committee has been in closed session, and that is pursuant to RSA 91A 32D, consideration of the acquisition, sale, or lease of real or personal property, which, if discussed in public, would likely benefit a party or parties whose interests are adverse to those of the general community. And with that, I'll call our meeting to order this evening, and we'll start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Do we have any review or additions to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move into public input. Do I have any public input this evening? No?
You want to let them know we're short one tonight?
Oh, yes, thank you. Mr. Barca is out this evening traveling for work, so we have 8 voting members this evening. With that, I will move to correspondence, and thank you again to Mr. Taylor for filling in his chair last week and keeping the process moving along, and also for putting together tonight's correspondence. So since our last meeting on October 17th, we had correspondence which included an invitation from the town of Litchfield for the November 21st school budget meeting at the fire station community room. Also on October 17th, Chairman Sun forwarded the BA report from the 10-16 meeting. On 10-17, Chairman Sun forwarded information from Ms. Kleiner about the updated insurance rates. Also on the 17th, Chairman Sun forwarded information from Ms. Kleiner about diesel rates. And also on the 17th, Chairman Sun forwarded information from Ms. Kleiner about salary changes. On October 19th, Matthew Sullivan sent the draft meeting minutes for the October 17th meeting. On October 22nd, Chairman Sun sent the agenda for the October 24th meeting. And on October 23rd, Chairman Sun forwarded information from Ms. Kleiner about Primex increases. That is our correspondence since last week. And I will entertain a review and acceptance of minutes from October 17th.
So, mate.
A motion from Mr. Burt. Have a second?
Yep. Second.
Second from Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstain. Motion carries 8-0-0. And with that, we will move into town business. Tonight, we're going to continue with our town voting. Last week, the committee was able to move through approximately 23 of the departments and budgets. We have about 11 left this evening to continue going through. Just an update to those of you watching from home. We currently sit $163,043 over the tax cap. And our work is, as everyone remembers, is we are legally obligated to at least get under that tax cap. So that is where we'll start tonight. Before we begin with the first item on our agenda tonight, which is library, I know we want to pick up the conversation from last week as it pertained to fire impact fees. Mr. Leary, would you mind maybe taking a second and just updating us on action that the Board of Selectmen took earlier this week?
Yeah, we made the motion to approve $40,000 fire impact fees.
Okay. So do I have a motion to
make a motion to reduce debt by $40,000.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Burt to reduce
981 debt.
472310 debt by $40,000.
Second.
Second by Ms. Douglas. Any additional discussion on that?
Yeah, I got a couple points that I want to make. So if there were these impact fees there and the Board of Selectmen provided a budget that was over the tax cap, why wasn't this action taken before? And then 2 weeks ago, when I asked if the town had any additional cuts that they would like to make to try to help get under the tax cap, I was given nothing. So my question is, why isn't the town being proactive in kicking over all rocks like this and taking care of this before the budget even gets to the budget committee?
Never thought of the impact fees, to be honest with you.
Okay, then I guess my follow-up question is, are there any other impact fees that we could potentially use before we sit here and try to cut potential personnel and services that is low-hanging fruit that is much easier to take? I mean, do we have anything that can do anything for roads, the dump, IT, police, anything?
So, I mean, that's a different situation. The impact fees can be used for the fire station because that is directly related to growth. You can't use impact fees towards current staffing, towards current expenses, towards any of that.
Completely
There-
understand, but
there
if you were to
are
turn
some-
around and tell me that you had $10,000 for sanitation, why couldn't we then at that point increase hours of service by an hour a week to be able to tap into those fees? Like, I'm asking for some creativity about, please disclose what impact fees are available, so that way we can go ahead and attack that first and see if we can come up with creative ways to avoid a budget cut.
Well, we did supply what is available. It's in the economic tab. You asked for
Yep.
what is available and what is encumbered, and we sent that.
Okay, but there's nothing from the town or the Board of Selectmen in terms of recommendations on how we might use those to avoid meaningful tax cuts? I mean, meaningful budget cuts?
We are thinking of using some of the highway, which we would have to, request of the selectmen for vehicles. And we did not put vehicles into the CIP for that reason. We're going for another grant and we're thinking of using impact fees. There really isn't anything else that we looked at. Now, the selectmen asked the question Monday night about the CERT team and can we use some of the impact fees to outfit the CERT team? That was a great question. I have sent that over to legal because I think it's just borders the line where I want a legal opinion on it, but I think it's a good
I think you
idea.
can absolutely make that case.
So, I mean, that's one, but you folks have already made that cut. So we would simply be
Yeah.
using
And I'd
it.
caution against using impact fees to provide additional service hours, because that's a one-time funding source that you're now on the hook for forever. So I like the idea
Well-
of outfitting people, like doing equipment that has a longer shelf life, because, and then if we want to expend the hour, that just gets into a dicey situation.
But don't forget, we also have a lease coming up as far as the communications tower that could potentially handle years 2 and beyond. And
175,000.
if you're telling me that it has to be an increase in services, it can't be the purchase of equipment, then
But it could be like, it sounds like we could potentially make the case for some new equipment to provide, we have more streets now, we have more of this, that, the other. I'm sure we could come up with some creative reason.
Well, with police, you could look at it that way. I mean, there are more houses and more streets, so that there's more coverage, so you're not adding hours, but you're actually
A
adding
police
work.
car, yeah.
It's 150,000.
Thank you.
Or what's that?
The lease. Any additional discussion on the motion at hand?
No, makes sense.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion carries 800. So with that motion, before we move into library, that currently puts us $123,043 over the tax cap. So with that, I'm gonna move back to our list that Mr. Taylor was taking us through last week, and we will go to library for 4550.20. Do I have any motions for library 4550.20? And if you remember, you have to open up the budget there. There's a link to open up their budget from within. Yes, Mr.
So
Taylor.
I do have one motion, and then I'm gonna have a question specifically about the impact fees. So my motion is library line 123, a reduction of $2,660.
I second, because that was gonna be my reduction.
Motion by Mr. Taylor, second by Ms. Douglas. Discussion?
Straight unable to expand services when we're already that far up and over the budget, but if I take a look at the impact fees, as long as I'm reading this correctly, Ms. Kleiner, there's a 2024 year-to-date balance of $12,768.25 of library impact fees.
I see that as well.
Okay, so then I guess my question would be, for the library, if this is to expand services, could at least year one be covered by impact fees, and then ultimately, this would be able to be used over the next 4 or 5 years to fund that additional hours?
So line 123, can you give me a little bit more detail?
I'm sorry.
Assistant
It's the
library.
assistant librarian.
The expansion of assistant library hours.
Mr. Taylor,
I would say no, because number one, you've had it on your warrant in the past.
Okay,
Number two, I think it is expansion of her hours for existing programs that already exist. I haven't been told that it's for new programming. I just think you have a assistant librarian who's not properly funded with hours.
okay.
Not for new, right, exactly.
Okay, is there any equipment or an expansion of somebody else's role and responsibility as far as services to the town that could be used in order to give you your bottom line number that you're looking for?
you're talking about to offset the 2660?
Correct.
While she's looking at that,
You
can
want
I,
to stay
can I
away
ask how
from
you,
impact
how,
fees for salaries. I don't think you don't want to fund salaries with impact fees.
Well, no, what I'm saying is there something in that overall library budget that we could use $2,600
Just
for?
computer and networking equipment for $2,574.
Thank you. Just looking for some assistance as far as creativity. Thank you, Mr. Cutter.
Mr. Taylor, can I ask
Sure.
how you arrived at the 2,660?
I believe that
was
in
what
the
they-
library link, that is the direct cost of the additional assistant librarian hours.
Yeah, if we look at their proposed budget highlights, there's a 2660 additional 4 hours per week for assistant children's librarian. That's their total. So, and the other case too is we've already spoken to the fire department of a similar situation of adding hours and expansion of services with the recognition that those types of things ought to go before the voters. So to be consistent with what we're planning to do with the fire department, it should also be handled at the library as well. Both are looking to expand hours, both should go before the voters. And realistically, this has gone before the voters, that's why it's in the budget and not on a warrant article, because the warrant articles have not had favorable outcomes. So I just would,
Those
We've
warrant
done-
articles were for considerable more money, too.
yes, but there's certain words in town that are, even though they're not 4 letters, are still considered 4 letters, because there was a no and then it happened anyway. I would rather us not revisit that in a different part of town, so if the voters say no, then it should still go before the voters again.
Additional discussion.
You're expanding the hours, you're not adding personnel, right?
That's what the last warrant article was for.
No, it was to add a position. Yes, adding hours.
It's additional services, the expansion of services, which is what the fire department's looking to do, and
They're
we're,
adding personnel.
they are currently, no.
They're
no.
adding personnel.
they're
They have
adding
2
personnel
people
and
there, they're
fires.
gonna add a third. That's different.
All right, well, we've done it with the school, we've taken tutors and stuff and gone from
So-
part-time to full-time, so.
The
to me-
amount was
We go full-time, now
$2,660.
you're talking benefits.
It doesn't, it's, the principle of the matter is, it's an expansion, it's been said no to.
I'm gonna borrow your line, I agree to disagree with you.
I'm good, I'm okay with that.
Any additional discussion on the motion at hand?
What is the motion?
It is a reduction of line, I guess technically line 123 and
And one-
130 based on the budget highlights of $2,660 that is tied to, quote, additional 4 hours per week for assistant children's librarian.
Correct.
I don't think you can do it there. That's my thought,
Why?
because it's tied to wages in your motion.
But it's for the 4 hours per week additional.
Where else would it come from? Because it has to come from the budget.
So in other words, you don't feel comfortable with the title being in the motion, and you would rather just leave it generic, that it's line 123 3 and
No,
130?
I guess I'm just trying to think about
What was
this
the
a bit.
program that was
I'm
taken
trying to
out that
understand-
you wanted to put back in? And how much was that? Remember you had a program that you wanted? That got pulled out last year and then you put back in?
Well, there wasn't any specific programs, but it was, it wasn't like
I wanna call it Hulu, but it's not.
It was just 4 hours,
Oh,
more services for
No, yeah, I'm not talking about the services. There was a program or something like Hulu or something like that that you pulled out. Hoopla. Yeah,
Hoopla.
and how much is that?
The Hoopla is.
Don't the schools have that too?
that would be
Yes.
under IT.
I think it's
It's
like
under,
$3,000, it was like $3,069.
So that's an expansion of services, in my opinion. We could use the money, the impact fees for that. We
What-
could cut that from the budget.
What is Hoopla? What does it do
I
again?
don't think so, because they had that on a grant. And with impact fees, you can't transfer money from something you are paying for a grant to the,
Makes sense.
Even though it
impact.
wasn't
Okay,
in
could you
last
put
year.
it towards books and periodicals, because obviously that is expanding
Well, I think we're
the
doing
depth
two,
and
I
breadth
think
of the
there's two
library.
different discussions here, right? And I guess that's where I'm getting mixed up.
Well, let's
Right.
definitely make sure we
There's
spend them.
expansion
but-
of service, which we're talking about, which I
Mm-hmm.
agree with. And then there's also the discussion of impact fee, which is separate.
Right, because there's plenty of things they
Trying to
could
figure
do.
out
They
where
can outfit
Right.
the
and
pavilion
it's
more. They could
figuring out-
expand their
I was
summer
blending
program.
the impact fee for the use of your motion. I don't think that's the right way to do it.
Oh. No, I think it should just still be, to me, it's an expansion of services. To be consistent with other expansion of services, ought to be on a warrant article.
Any additional discussion on the motion at hand?
I don't agree with that.
I know you don't, and that's okay. I will like you anyway.
All right.
Ditto.
If no
Isn't
addition,
it $2,624?
I'm reading right
This
off
is
of the
2660.
2025 budget highlights from the library.
So maybe is there a number? I thought it was not a nice, it's very even and round, so it seems.
highlights.
if you look at the
2060.
budget highlights tab, Kim, it's line 7 says 123 and 130 wages, $2,660, additional 4 hours per week for assistant children's librarian.
I think they got a problem then. Okay.
All right.
Is it too much or too little, or?
Well, just in their budget detail, it's 2,624, that line. So,
Well, but does that
But we'll
include
figure it
the
out.
other, whatever?
might possibly
fees go with it?
include, I don't know
FICA
if
or
that
whatever.
employee has
Benefits.
dental or health or,
It could,
yeah, I'm wondering if the difference between the two
it
is
could be that.
a benefit and I don't wanna cut the person's benefit.
Yeah, I know Vicky has on here that she does have $2,660.
All right. Call to vote. We'll do roll call. Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Cutter,
Yes.
Mr. Leary,
No.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I am a no. Mr. LaPlante,
No.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes?
and Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-3. Okay. Any additional motions on library this evening?
Make a motion on line 670, books and media, to cut $3,069.
So, I'm sorry, say that, which line again? I'm sorry.
670, books and media, $3,069.
Motion by Mr. LaPlante. Do I have a second?
Sure.
Second by Ms. Douglas. Discussion?
Yeah, so my thought there is at the end of July of '24, they've gone through $6,000 thus far. Even if you were to double that through 7 months, you're looking at $12,600. Their budget for this year is $18,000 there. They're gonna be a surplus, it looks like a surplus this year if you hold that number true. And they're requesting an extra $3,000 for $21,000 in this year. I'm just asking to go back to the '24 budget of $18,704.
Part of that increase looks to be the Hoopla resource that Mr. Leary was referring to for $2,000. So that's 2/3 of that increase.
Is that because last year was a grant and next year they're gonna pay for it?
It was being funded by
Still showing a
another
surplus,
source, yes, that they had obtained during,
And now they have to pay for it.
right.
Also, the good portion of our budget for the books and media is usually spent towards the end of the year, because in the summer, we spend all that money on the books and media. Because in the summer, our libraries, they're doing the summer program, so they don't have time to order those books. So it's usually done, we get those books by the end of the year. So it's not like we carry that over.
Additional discussion on the motion at hand.
Well, if I can just ask about Hoopla, was that utilized quite a bit?
Quite a bit, yep.
What exactly does that do?
It's a digital, there's Libby, it's just a different platform, to go online and
Rent.
books and media. Hoopla is a little different than Libby. It's used just as much.
So is it a safe, well, let me rephrase that. Do we have two resources that provide very similar services, Libby and Hoopla?
Well, with Hoopla, you don't ever have to wait for a book. Libby, the books aren't always available, so sometimes you wait 6 months for a book. I've waited that long.
So would it make sense to move away from Libby and move to Hoopla?
No. No. They're just different platforms that people use and enjoy.
I mean, could Hoopla, to Mr. Leary's point, could Hoopla be used for
People
impact
get
fees?
using just.
She said
No,
no
no.
because it was a grant.
Was
Just get used to
funded by a
Hoopla.
grant.
Okay.
No, I personally don't use Hoopla. I prefer Libby.
No, I understand there's preferences, but what like my son just said, is you have two platforms that basically do the same thing.
Right, is it
Just
And I think
preference
with
and-
Libby, you can use it either on your, phone or like your Kindle. With Hoopla, I have to read it through my iPad. So there's different devices you can't. So I prefer to use Libby because I can get it on my Kindle or I can get it on my phone.
Do you know what the cost of Libby is? I don't see that.
Honestly, I don't know.
Where is that in the budget?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out where that is in the budget. Because I don't
Try the bud-
see it listed anywhere.
So in the detail tab.
That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I don't find it either.
So based on what I'm looking at, Hoopla charges you for every time a book is checked out. So how many checkouts are we allowed through this service?
Honestly, I don't know that.
Isn't Libby the New Hampshire downloadable
New
book
Hampshire
consortium?
downloadable books,
Yes,
it is.
it's that. It's New Hampshire downloadable book.
Right.
Oh, so it's twice as much as Hoopla.
Sometimes it helps when you read.
Sorry, yeah.
That's the only reason I know that.
I guess where I stand on this is I feel like if we have two services that are providing similar functionality and the reason to have two is a preference versus like one provides A and one provides B and they're providing completely different things. It seems like we should just make a decision on which service, whether that's Hoopla or Livy, provides a better opportunity for community members to access digital books.
But are we talking about the motion right now, or are we talking about something different?
We are still talking about the motion because his motion was $3,069 from books and media. I was just trying to.
I think more
Digest that.
research is necessary because
Yeah.
based on this, there's some interesting points of view on Hoopla relative to libraries, as in it's being dropped. So I'd be curious as to whether we are going to end up with a better service. Are we signing ourselves up for a service that's going to cost us more in the long run? If we have to pay, says here, anywhere between $1 to $3 for a download every time a patron clicks, like what is our exposure on this? Like, because clear, if we get charged per borrow, how many borrows are we allowed before we bust? Like, what are we exposing ourselves to?
Do we have a contract for Hoopla?
We'd have to check with Vicky.
So yes, sounds like there is a bigger library. There's a lot more instantaneous access. But my concern is the cost is gonna blow our budget before we know it.
I think I would like
But
to.
they have the ability to shut it. It's not like you
But-
have 100 residents that are all, downloading books.
cap it
You
at a
have
certain
a
amount and
cap.
it's done.
Yeah, and you have the ability. They're getting numbers on exactly how many downloads. And I thought it was weekly, but it's been a long time since
And-
I've done that.
Any additional discussion on the motion at hand, which is a reduction of $3,069 to line 670?
when we look at where we are tax cap wise, we are providing listen, my husband downloads books and audio all the time. He's got a very long commute. I am proud my household probably hits that pretty well. So I get it. But at the same time, I also recognize we can't be all things to all people because we're already busted our budget, our cap. So we have to choose. Like if there's two services that are similar, we may need to figure out, well, which one provides the best service for the most people, which means that it may not be the best service for all people. So, but which one should we be investing in?
You would decide that, we would, at the library would decide that, right?
Well,
Well, I'd like your input so I know which, to support which budget number to reduce.
We need to get Vicky to
I,
apply more.
I think what I would like to see is,
And Carrie too.
Yeah,
We
you're
can take
just
out
cutting-
3660. They can decide to put it back in and get rid of Libby and save themselves $3,000 for something else.
I don't disagree
That
because
is
it's,
correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
yes,
You're
I,
cutting the line,
Right,
correct.
you're not deciding the service.
correct.
right.
They can decide that.
I would be interested in seeing data on both of those services as well as any contracts that we might have.
But for now, I'm considering where we are in the budget.
Correct.
I'm okay
I
with, I'd vote yes, we can always add it back.
I agree with you on that. I think I know where I am today, but I think I would still like to see those that
Right.
could inform my decision down the road. Any additional discussion? All right, call to vote. And again, just to recap, this is a reduction of $3,069 to line 670. Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Cutter,
Yes.
Mr. Leary,
No.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes,
I am a yes. Mr. LaPlante,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
and Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-1-0. Any additional motions for library this evening? All right. Seeing none, we will move to Mosquito District. Thank you all. Thank you. We will move to Mosquito District 4411.20. Do I have any motions for mosquitoes? Seeing none,
contract, really.
move to code enforcement. It is 424120. Have any motions for code 424120?
Nope.
Okay. See none. We'll move to health department 441110. Have any motions this evening for health 441110?
Much there either.
That's not gonna do it.
Moving right along. I'm gonna skip that one. We're gonna go to general government facilities, 419410. 419410. Do I have any motions this evening for government facilities?
This is where the old fire department falls in, right?
Yes, sir.
Hold on, I'm gonna pull up the email.
And while we're waiting on that, just an update, we are 117,314 over the tax cap.
Hey, I reconcile with you.
Thank you.
But it's also nice to see year 5 of 5, right, on the equipment lease on this one.
It is, but I feel like through many discussions over the past couple of weeks, we're referring to this a lot, and it's like being earmarked a lot for
Well-
solving a lot of problems
Well, I
next
guess the
year, and that
question is-
concerns me.
No, it's-
What do we have, could we use police impact fees towards this? Because it wasn't part of it because of expanded, like, we had to have better
Yeah.
coverage in a growing town. Like,
the police only has 31K of.
well, we don't
Oh,
currently
at
have a
least something.
project for them.
Do I have any motions for 419410
Sure, he's working
general
with the math over
government buildings? I know I was trying to talk really slow and buy him some time.
I'd like to make a motion to reduce that by $5,600.09.
Can't we get an even number?
$5,609.05.
What the estimate is.
Can you say it?
$600.09, right?
Right.
Yeah.
$5,600.09. I have a motion by Mr. Burke is that just a bottom line?
It rounds.
Was there a
Yeah,
line item?
That's everything involved with the old fire station.
I'll second it, but I can't believe you didn't just go through a dollar.
I'm gonna say that's line 411.
I have a motion to reduce line 411 by $5,609. Motion by Mr. Burke, second by Ms. Douglas. Discussion.
been saying it for like 3 years. I don't see why we're
Actually, I
holding
can't
on
say
to
it's
that
one.
building, and I
It
think
isn't.
if someone's
It's many
Profiles.
different,
Yeah, that's many
it's
different.
many different lines.
right,
Take away 411.
Yeah.
there's like propane, electricity, but the total is
Yeah.
$5,609.
It's a reduction of,
So is that everything
This
associated with it?
Yes.
Conservation uses it, fire department uses
I think
it,
if,
highway
I
uses
think if
it.
conservation, I
Boy
think if one of
Scouts have
those,
used it.
and I think if one of those departments wants it, then I think they should foot the bill to take care of it.
So the problem again with this one is, this is actually, I cannot believe I'm gonna be defending this because I thought it should have been knocked down years ago when we put up the new one. But it went to the voters.
It did
The
go to the
voters chose to keep
They
it.
did.
So the will of the voters is actually to keep the building. Regardless of what I think about it, I wanted cold storage, cut everything off, a building with no heat. I agree with you in principle. That's not what the voters wanted.
$5,000 to have that type of cold storage in that space, to me, is pretty small dollars for what that offers the town at the moment.
And it's also $6,000 to it, as Mrs. Douglas keeps saying over and over and over, we are so far over the tax cap, right? We can't have everything.
You're-
And we just keeping these old buildings.
You don't like the old buildings in town, that's very apparent, Brian.
Hey, it looks really nice now.
You've made comments
No, Bob,
about
that's not
knocking
the-
down
that's not-
every
that's-
single building
that's
in
not
this
the
town.
case.
You
You
talked
have a
about the
fire
wrecking ball hitting the thirties building, you talked about the fire station,
Okay.
you've talked about the old town hall. It's obvious you have no regard for the heritage of this town.
all right.
But
I
what
don't know why you
happens?
live
Hold
here.
on,
Why
let's-
don't
hold
you
on.
back up and move?
Guys,
But
let's
what
move on.
happened?
Why don't
Okay,
you not, why don't you not
okay.
get personal, Bob, all
Hold
right?
on, guys,
Said,
guys.
we could sell to the Historic Society for $1
Where's the
and let
hammer?
them take the bill. You don't need to
Any-
get personal, Bob.
Any
You get plenty. of
Any
personal.
relevant discussion to the motion at hand, Ms. Kleiner?
Yes. The only thing I will say is legally, you are obligated to supply restroom facilities to the gentlemen that work within the LCV TV building. And currently, they use the bathroom at the old fire station. You are obligated to supply them bathroom facilities.
Any,
And the reality too is there is actually stuff being stored in there that the town needs. Are we gonna get, close it, completely close it down? What is your goal, to just
Mr.
cold
Chairman,
storage or,
question.
I just wanna understand where we're going with this. Like, completely get rid of the building, or, because
People said no.
I agree with you.
all right, I'm gonna recognize question. Question's been
All
called. Roll call vote. Motion at hand is to reduce, general government buildings by $5,600.09. Roll call vote, Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Cutter.
No.
Mr. Leary.
No.
Ms. Douglas.
I'm actually voting no.
I am a no. Mr. LaPlante.
Abstain.
Mr. Taylor.
No.
And Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion fails 2-5-1. Any additional motions this evening on 419410 general government buildings?
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, sir.
On line 635, gasoline.
Yep.
A reduction of $6,635.
$6,635. I have a motion by Mr. Hayes. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Second by Ms. Douglas. Discussion.
Line was that, sorry?
That was line
Line
635.
Sorry,
six.
what was that amount again?
Yeah, line 635. The motion is.
$6,635.
Basis being,
Mr. Hayes,
Yep.
a discussion?
Yeah,
Sir.
essentially that's a reduction from 57,671 down to 51,036 even. And that puts the gas pretty much in line with what we see at the pump, $3 a gallon. I know it's hard to predict the future, but we need bottom line, we need cuts. Taking into consideration that we do not pay tax of $23 and, excuse me, 23 cents, 23.8 cents to be exact. We should be paying far less than $3 a gallon, which we're seeing at the pump.
What was the amount that we set for gasoline? Was it last week when there was a motion?
Oh, that was diesel.
That was
Oh, it was
Said it-
diesel.
We said it
That
across
was
the board
diesel,
at
yes.
390.
Okay. Additional discussion on the motion.
Do we have any idea in terms of, I know that fire has special diesel fuel, how much of the gallons are used by fire and what is the typical rate there? Like, I mean, out of the 17,000 gallons, let's just say if 5,000 is used by fire, but their special diesel is $6 a gallon. Do we have any idea as far as what percentage and what their rate is for their special fuel?
Yes, I thought I had included that in my memo, I'm
I
sorry.
think you did, yeah.
Which I don't have in front of me, should have brought it.
And then I guess my
Diesel.
follow-up question as well,
We do track exactly the number of gallons that we've purchased for fire. We track how many gallons have been used at the highway and at the transfer station. The transfer station and the highway have another gas that's used for equipment, that's separate, from the regular pump that pumps into the cars.
then my follow-up question, just to confirm that Mr. Hayes is accurate. Do police, fire, more importantly, building and highway, are they all tax exempt to
They
his point?
are tax exempt
Yes.
for the New Hampshire tax that goes into the roadways.
Right.
They are not federally tax exempt for the environmental fees and the, they call it LUT or
Okay.
lust or what
And was
something.
Mr. Hayes accurate in
With the-
terms of what
yes.
the New Hampshire state tax is?
The New Hampshire
Yeah,
state tax. is not
23 point, yeah,
Yes.
20 cents, 23 cents, .83.
So-
Almost
And that's
24.
That
accurate?
sounds correct,
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
That is correct?
yes.
Additional discussion on the motion at hand. Okay. Just recap, this is a vote to reduce line 635 gasoline by $6,635. Roll call vote. Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Cutter,
Yes.
Mr. Leary,
No,
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I am a yes. Mr. LaPlante.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor
Yes?
and Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-1-0. Any additional motions on 419410 general government buildings?
110,679.
You're a step ahead of me.
Yep.
110,679. Thank you. Nothing else on general government buildings. We will move to police administration 4210.10. 4210.10 police administration. Do I have any motions this evening?
I have a question before we get into this, and apologies if I missed this in the session with the chief. Why are we moving to the Ford Explorer model from the Tahoe models? Why are we going down?
because when the government did their fuel regulations a few years ago, they made vehicles comply, and it has absolutely killed the Tahoe engine. And they are dying faster than they can run them, really. So they wanna go back to the Ford Explorer, and in this case, they're talking about a truck.
150, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what it
because-
is?
Yeah, because they're lasting longer than the Tahoes now, and they're a little less money.
Okay, thank you.
Do they still allow for the cage in the back?
Yes. Yeah, they're full-size with a cage, but they also have the rollout in the bed so that they
Yeah.
can carry gear if they need to.
I mean, that was my primary concern was will they be able to, when they
Transport.
transport somebody who needs to be isolated from society for a few moments, would they be able to fit them in? And if the answer is yes, then it seems to make a smart move.
The chief has a group that he has spoken to nationally, chiefs across the country, about this.
So what is the ability or the possibility of purchasing one of these out of the unassigned fund balance if we were to reduce by one?
That's the question I asked last week. She doesn't know that number yet. As far as what is in
Question
the
was-
unassigned fund balance. When I asked you last week, what do we,
Yes, I do not.
we don't know that yet.
No, and we do
Not
not
the
have a
DRA
tax
sets.
rate, we checked.
Tax rate.
Yeah.
Do I have any motions for 421010 police?
I do have a motion, but I want
Yes.
to make sure that Ms. Douglas doesn't have one, because I don't want to steal it from her, because it was her idea when the presentation was given.
Oh, I thought it was already accounted for, isn't it?
Did the bonus get taken out?
Oh, no, I didn't. You can have that. I'm perfectly willing for you to, what is it? Imitation is the greatest form of flat. Go ahead. You can have it.
I'd like to make a motion to cut line 111 by $5,000.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Taylor, second by Ms. Douglas. Discussion?
As it was brought up during the budget discussion, if it is full staff, then the likelihood that we're gonna need a bonus in 2025 decreases. Realize that there could be somebody that leaves, but at that point, that's probably a risk that
Well,
we're taking.
if somebody were to leave and the
You'd have to
position-
hire somebody else to replace that.
But you'd have probably a gap in service,
Correct.
so that money would be able to cover that. So, but he did, the chief, as he was sitting there, did seem comfortable with that because the
Mr. Leary, I
people
see you
that.
shaking your head on that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Any additional discussion?
No, but thank you for remembering that one, 'cause I,
Seeing none, called vote. Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Cutter,
Yes.
Mr. Leary,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
yes.
I'm a yes. Mr. LaPlante,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
and Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0. Any additional motions this evening?
I'm not saying I'm proposing anything here, but again, without the chief here to ask the question, what would be more difficult for him to lose, an officer or a vehicle?
Certainly, I'm not gonna speak for the chief,
Right.
but
I think we're at a
an
point now.
existing officer?
Pardon me?
You
One
mean
le-
an unfilled position, I am
I'm just-
hoping. They have one candidate that is in the pipeline, and I do not believe they will have any open positions, so we will actually be terminating?
I'm just asking, what would be easier for them to get one less officer or less
Well-
cruiser?
Well, I'd be very careful because these individuals are under a union contract.
But even still, like, if you were to reduce a vehicle, there's still an opportunity potentially to be able to get one through unassigned fund balance.
Possible to get two through there.
But the reality is, right now, the repairs are killing us, so we need at least one.
Correct.
So would you be reducing by one or by two?
And repairs aren't really that huge right now.
Currently, there's
Couple of that engine
two.
rebuilds.
Sure, but when your vehicles are up at, the auto shop, I'm pretty sure people drive by, I'm like, wonder how many are on the road.
He went into Kim's office a week or so ago and said that he literally had no patrol vehicles available.
Correct.
We
We have
have
3
to-
individuals
That
on.
he had to use the admin vehicles and the SRO officer needed a ride to school.
So I think we need at least one to get them back in the budget.
I
Can the bus pick him up?
agree with that.
So can we live with one versus two with the hope
Secondary
that
Albuquerque.
another one could come from another avenue? I'd be okay considering that, but I wouldn't be okay with considering cutting it completely.
I need.
No, I agree.
I agree with that.
I support
I would love for one to remain in the budget, and I would love for, hopefully, there an opportunity for unassigned fund balance to get the second one.
When do you think you'll know where your unassigned fund balance? Will that be before, November, December?
I would estimate, yes. We'll know as soon as the tax rate is set,
Okay. So if I were to.
all of that is determined.
So if I were to make a propose a reduction now, with the understanding that if more information were to come later, we would have a better understanding of whether or not we could still fund two, each being through a different avenue. I firmly believe one should be in the budget, because we should get them back in the budget.
I agree with you.
But whether we can really take two this year, I don't know, through taxes. So I would be comfortable reducing it to one.
Is that a motion?
I'm making a motion, was it 68,903, which is, because we went from 3 to 2, so I'm going from 2 to 1.
Motion by Ms. Douglas. We'll go ahead. The motion to reduce line 760 by
I
$68,903.
believe that's the number, right, for the car?
It is.
So it would still, I'm sorry, that's a motion. I need
Motion and a second. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Burke. Discussion.
It gets the trucks, the vehicles, whatever we're gonna use, back into the budget, which is what they need to be. Considering where we are tax cap wise, I don't know that we can do two this year. But at least it'd be a step in the right direction. Whether or not we can possibly fund a second one using alternative funds, hopefully, but at least we'd be moving back towards getting them back into the budget.
I absolutely believe we should have at least one in the budget. Right,
All right, so since there's 3 in the budget,
But
right?
there were three.
There was originally 3.
They pulled one, we pulled the
It still
second.
shows 3, so,
Well, the
Yeah.
description does, but the board cut one, so there's actually
Got it,
$2
got it.
was.
got it. 137,
Yeah.
0.
Kim, do you know offhand what value there is to a typical trade-in of a cruiser?
Well, it's getting destroyed by not a lot.
I know I'm sure it varies from one to the other, but I'm just
It does
curious,
vary.
like, on average, do you know, like, what we get for?
Karen, do you remember what?
I wanna say based
What
off,
we
Say
got
like 6
15?
grand,
I was
some
gonna
of
say
the
between 5 and 10.
older ones, yeah.
Closer to 5, I think.
I think you're right, especially if they know that the
Typical
engines are getting
auction,
destroyed.
Yeah, these have significant
Hours.
issues.
Yeah.
If you can get them.
And high
checked in
mileage.
Like a couple of years, it's higher,
Yeah.
but
But I'd rather try to explore other ways of funding that than trying to cut a position and then be like, oh, well,
I'm a people over stuff person. Like I agree.
Do we know how many of the engines have been paid for by GM under warranty versus Edwards?
One, definitely.
one definitely.
I believe two.
You think 2?
Two, at least had some work. One whole engine, another I think was partially covered.
By GM.
Partially
I
covered.
mean, they
One was
have-
covered and one was
They
partial.
have a big responsibility to make things right for not only municipalities, but everybody else that's buying those junks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has been a fight.
but I mean, in their case, they'll say, well, the government made us, Uncle Sam made us do it. But in this case, though, my understanding is that these have a better track record, they last a little longer. So hopefully,
We heard that same story.
well, I wasn't a fan of those vehicles to begin with, but you know, what do
The
I
Fords were
know?
more the size issue.
Any
Yeah, it was the size for the officer to
Yeah.
sit in the seat.
any additional discussion on the motion at hand?
Look,
So-
I agree with everyone and what everyone said. I believe 2 need to be in the budget. I do. Looking at the repair bills that are continuous, I actually think it's more cost advantageous for us as a town to have 2 in our budget than 1 in the budget and a very high continuous repair bill. That's what I'm balancing.
Again, it goes back to, you know what?
What else are you gonna
Do
cut?
you want
different?
2 cruisers, or do you want the full staff? Because we can't have both.
I
Gonna
think
cut
that's the
overtime?
hard place where we are with the tax cap,
Because
unfortunately.
realistically,
Because
when you
if
take it
Harry's
out,
doesn't go through, I've got one for personnel to the tune of the same number,
But
approximately.
I don't know how you can make that motion when they're protected by a contract in the union. Legitimate question.
From what I see here, according to this, the second SRO position is still open, and one of the officer positions, even though they're in the process of going through it, according to this, is still open. Or you can reduce overtime, which was the promise of
Overtime is
the
always-
second SRO. So again, I don't
it's a
care
different conversation.
which one it comes from, but it's going to be man hours or a cruiser.
And that was a promise from the
Right.
police chief, I think 3 police chiefs ago, you'd call that in the budget, that as soon as he gets those extra officers, basically, not gonna eliminate, he didn't say he would
It was
eliminate
gonna-
overtime.
the new position was gonna fund itself through the savings and
It
overtime.
would reduce drastically overtime.
However, when I pressed the chief on that, remember what he said, that now his training requirements are far higher than they were 3 years ago, so therefore he needs overtime to cover the additional training.
I think there may also be a difference in like how they're staffing. Like one guy had one staffing set up, and this guy could have his own staffing set up. But at the end of the day, regardless, it's a bottom line budget, right? If we took it from personnel and they decided they wanted to keep the person and cut the car, they could still do that. So it's
Anything else on the motion? All right, roll call vote. Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Cutter,
Yes.
Mr. Leary,
No.
Ms. Douglas.
I don't like it, but yes.
I am a yes. Mr. LaPlante,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes,
and Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-1-0.
36,776.
Yes, ma'am. We're currently,
See, Scott, you're not the only one that stands out on an island by himself sometimes.
we
I don't
currently,
know, last week I was out there a long time.
with that reduction, we currently sit $36,776 over the tax cap.
And all insurances, all unknowns are basically in right now, right? Do we have any, so there's
Don't
nothing
have
to be,
any unknown cost.
all right,
Thank you.
that's good. I just like,
Yeah,
all right.
that's a good question to ask. Any additional motions on 4210.10 police?
Just got a question on line item 140. Overtime for officers, not training overtime, but just straight overtime. If you look at the mean, the average over 20, 21, 22, significantly lower than what they're asking for 25.
Is that because we weren't fully staffed?
Maybe.
Don't forget,
But it should
it's
be
also based
higher,
on the updated police contract, so
Was
their,
that-
their rate is higher with the new contract.
Also true.
So therefore, overtime would be higher.
So it's not based off hours, it's based off the rate, you're saying?
Well, I mean, the overall spend, they could get more overtime hours back in 2020, 2021
I'd like
than
him
they
to
can
do it.
today because of the fact of the contract rate increase.
Are most of the officers, when they're on detail, on overtime?
That's separate.
Yeah,
That's a
so
detail.
We're talking apples and oranges. Police details are billed.
funded.
So it doesn't fall into overtime?
No.
It's if they run past they're investigating something when they go out, they have to stay over to write the reports or whatever, I think that would be overtime.
I don't know if they pick up overtime shifts to do detail.
Any additional motions on 4210.10 police? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to police support services, 4210.50. Have any motions this evening on 4210.50?
Mostly a contract, isn't it?
Seeing none, move to insurance, 4196. Any motions this evening on insurance?
On the deductibles, is that, how much of the deductibles are, the word I hate, contractually obligated? Is there a possibility of changing that deductible?
I think that's right.
So are we talking health insurance?
No,
Or are you talking the
Tap.
deductible on the liability
well, on the liability.
Why is it so much higher? Like, we went from the sixties in 2020, 2021, 2022.
Now you're talking about the general liability. Scott's question is on the deductibles.
Oh, deductibles, yeah.
I haven't looked to see if their deductible, if the deductibles that we're carrying are
Okay.
standardized
I'm just
across
trying to
all
figure out, is there a
municipalities.
reason
I'd
why-
be happy to research it.
Yeah, I mean, is there any way we can get back to the 2020, 2021 that's closer to $1,000 on that line versus what it currently is 2,000, or am I?
Well, it was just that they carried 2 incidents versus 1. That's what it comes down to.
Okay.
So,
Okay, never mind.
So, like, I mean,
but he's right. I mean, I haven't looked at the actual policies themselves and compared them to other municipalities. We're all part of the Primex
right,
pool except for the 2 largest cities.
right, but the original basis was 2 incidents versus 1. But how you get 875 additional expense as opposed to 1,000, maybe it was less, I don't know. Or 1,200, I don't know. So maybe it's no longer 2. Maybe we changed our deductible. But I'm curious as to why our liability insurance has seems that, I mean, I know insurance is going up a lot anyway, but why so much?
Yeah, so they increased it across the board. And they just have a general increase according to industry trends.
It's a 50% increase in 3 years. That's crazy.
That's what happens to the
All
military.
of them
Yeah,
except,
if you buy things.
except unemployment.
Not much you can do about it.
Yeah, I know. Well, I guess communities could come
Stinks, but-
together to try to self-insure, I guess, but it's.
Any motions on 4196
Oh,
insurance? Seeing none.
Not responsibly, anyway.
Go to personnel administration, 415510. Do you have any motions this evening on personnel, 415510? Seeing none, we will move to advertising and regional associations, 419710.
I do have a motion on this one.
Mr. Taylor?
Line 555, a reduction of $617.
Motion by Mr. Taylor to reduce line 555 in advertising by $617. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by, that one to Mr. Burke.
Love it.
Discussion.
Just taking a look at 2022 and 2023, much lower than what is currently being proposed.
Say that again, Mr. Taylor?
So if I take a look at the details,
Oh, okay, I got you.
trend 2022, 217, to date 2023, 466.
Ms. Kleiner, was there a
Well, I would hope that's not too
a
deep.
rationale for that jump?
23 is
2023 is
1,089.
last year.
1,089.
Yeah,
I think the notes have to be updated.
I think it is a note.
Do you have the right one, Scott?
Well, I
look-
mean, there's a conflict between
comment on it.
actual versus the comment.
Yeah, I think the comment's outdated. It probably wasn't updated from last year's budget.
4197, that isn't updated. If we look at the general.
What was the reason we had such a low spend in 2022?
25 till-
Because that one's the outlier.
Nothing going on. Shut the town down.
Right,
That was
I mean, you
2020.
should, is that a
Still spent
COVID
$1,000
year?
No, 2022 was the one that
Now we're
was
coming out
the
of it.
outlier.
Yeah.
But I think Mr. Taylor was looking at the notes, the comments, and that appears to be outdated compared to the actuals in the columns.
That's correct,
Okay.
I'm looking to.
Yeah.
So we have a motion, we had a second. Any additional discussion on the motion?
Just, it was 1,089 last year, so make sure everyone's got that number right.
Right, and it all depends on how many, public hearings you need to have, how much action's going on within the town.
I mean, I'd say minus the 2022 year, it actually seems like it's in line with other years.
If you'd like, I can update get the information and update the line for you, the description, so that you have.
I think we
see
can
if
call
I
the
can
vote.
look and see what we are at.
Question called. Roll call. The motion is to reduce line 555 by $617. Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Cutter?
No.
Mr. Leary?
No?
Ms. Douglas?
No.
I am a no. Mr. LaPlante?
No.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
And Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Motion fails 3-5-0. Any additional motions in 419710 advertising this evening? Seeing none, that takes us through all of our departments.
Oh, we're still over.
We currently set $36,776 over the tax cap. We're obviously not obligated to get under that this evening, but I will entertain anyone who wishes to go back to any previous departments or revisit any previous discussions at this time.
And go to police.
421010.
Yep.
Okay.
So, right now, we're still waiting for an SRO, correct? We don't have, and we're waiting for a part-time police officer that we have in the pipeline. Is that correct?
Yes, what I've been told, an offer was about to be made, whether it was made today or
No, but it sounds
yesterday,
like
I do not know,
things are rolling as far as
Yes.
getting those two positions filled.
yes.
So I would think that with those two positions, that overtime should go down. So I'd like to make a motion to reduce 140 overtime by $20,000.
We have a motion by Mr. Burke to reduce line 140 overtime by $20,000. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Taylor. Discussion.
Just simply, like I said, you have 1.5 police officers coming. I can't see that in the next year, we can't save $20,000 in overtime.
I'd say you may be right. I would just like to hear it from the chief.
Yeah.
And if he said yeah, then I'd be all for it.
Maybe he'd come back with more. Wouldn't that be crazy?
I'll take back my motion then, and if we can get the chief here for the next meeting, I mean, that's my,
Or I can contact him and ask him that question.
Did you withdraw? Did you withdraw?
withdrew it.
Whatever,
Okay.
yeah.
Motion's been withdrawn.
Again, I'm just, if we getting another police officer and a half, I would think that we should be able to drive that number down.
I generally agree with that.
100%.
Any additional motions this evening from any other departments?
Not currently.
I know we are anticipating some additional information from library as it pertains to those two services we discussed earlier. Sounds like we've got some additional information coming from police as well. Could put us in the ballpark of another $22,000 to $23,000. That would still leave us over the tax cap by approximately $13,000 to $14,000. So that's a number to keep in mind. I think historically we've gotten to this point in the process and we've been under the tax cap. We're not obligated to do that. We have to do that in January. So if we're able to come back and revisit this budget, we're getting ready to move into the school process. So just to kind of pause where we are in the process, we are not meeting next week. Next week is Halloween. We have no scheduled meeting. And then we move into, on November the 7th, the joint process with the school. And so we have meetings with the school board meetings that are their meetings that we attend, ask questions, etc. And then we move into our school review and school voting that takes us, into December. It does not preclude us from coming back once we get additional information to make motions on the town budget to get under the tax cap that we could certainly do in November or December if we need to.
I think it's good. I think it would be good to allow the chief the time to actually look through manpower projections and see what he actually thinks he can pull together. Because maybe he'll surprise us, or maybe he'll be like, "There's no way." But
I agree with you, and it honestly could be an opportunity. I think now that the Board of Selectmen kind of sees where we are, like, are there other things that they could potentially feel comfortable with, kind of given where we are, knowing with what could come from library or police, and what that delta might be, what would the Board of Selectmen be comfortable with that they could bring to us?
What's scary right now is we're 35,000 still over. So if we can get that down to just to the zero, we can't vote on
That is
a
correct.
single warrant article. Well, we can vote on it, but
We can't support them.
We can't
support
recommend
it.
it.
Correct. That is a true statement.
so the question then is, like, if people should go home, dig into it, sharpen their pencils, and figure out what they're comfortable with to run the town. Honestly, like, that's the whole point of this budget, right? What does it take to run the town?
Yeah, and at this point, you know what? We were given something that was, call it 175,000 over, which I'm not happy about in the first place. Then we've cut it down to 36. I have no problem sending this back to the town and the Board of Selectmen. We've done a lot of the heavy lifting. Now at this point, figure it out, and then, you know what? Also come to us with funding for warrant articles so that we can go ahead and vote on them. But,
We won't
I mean,
get that information until mid-December, though.
right, I mean, we don't have to get under the tax cap until that point either,
Technically until,
until,
the budget hearing in January.
yeah. So, I mean, at this point, you know what? We did most of their work for them. Now at this point, you know what? You got the other 36,776 to get across the finish line. It's a 5% increase on the tax cap that we approved, that we were told, oh, no, we're not gonna go 5%. And went over 5% because it came in over the tax cap. We can't be the bad guys for everything.
Any additional comments or
We'll still be the bad guys. That's okay.
any additional comments or discussion on the current town budget and where we sit?
One question in town meeting, 740, election supplies.
What's the code for that? Sorry.
Oh, I don't,
Should be towards the beginning.
yeah.
What is it?
The new equipment that we're getting a grant from the state on, but I believe that grant's good for 2 years, and it's good until next year as well. So is that a need or a want for that $3,500 we have to put in to that this year?
The item's already been ordered.
Oh, it's already ordered? Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, we've already put in for,
Oh, there goes that then.
Why would you?
we had to, there was a deadline on,
Didn't she put those off 1 year?
The machines.
She did
Yeah.
They won't
last.
be
Yeah,
ready
she
till
did.
She did last year. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just was wondering if we could push it off until next year with the grant being not expiring until next year. But that's
That or there's gonna be lots of post-election sales.
Any additional discussion on the town budget this evening? I think seeing none, my recommendation will be that So we actually don't have a budget committee meeting that is our meeting until November the 14th.
So that gives
So
plenty of time.
So the
to
next
do-
two meetings that they're actually school board meetings that we attend. So November 14th is actually the next meeting that is ours. So I think, the ask would be that gives the police time, that gives library time. We will allocate time that evening, even though that's the school budget review. We will start that evening with an update from the town and obviously we'll get a lot of that stuff electronically, I know from you all. And we can begin that evening by an update on where we are with the town budget and any recommendations from the town to the Board of Selectmen on cuts that we can make at that point in time. Everybody comfortable with that?
And I know there's a school board comments on your agenda, but I'll just mention it now because you're talking about scheduling. Mr. Brunel did confirm last night that we are confirmed for November 13th. So at last week's meeting, there was a scheduling conflict for November 12th. We are now, it's no longer November 12th, it is November 13th.
Yeah, so the 7th.
And the 13th
Yeah.
is the joint session.
Thank you. And as a reminder for those, they are recorded, they are streamed. We typically have a percentage of the budget committee that's able to join in person. We've had people that have been traveling and have sent questions in advance that are asked and answered, so there is some flexibility to do that if needed.
Will we get a copy of it in advance?
I'm told we are on track for delivery of the budget to the budget committee on October 29th.
Can I request a hard copy?
I've already requested hard copies for the budget committee. Yeah.
All right. With that, I'm going to keep us moving in our agenda this evening. Any general updates from the town, Mr. Leary?
No, nothing really since last week. I'm looking through our agenda from Monday night. There's really nothing of much interest. It was a pretty easy night.
Any
Jinx
questions?
yourself.
Any
It's passed.
questions for Mr. Leary?
Just one.
Yep.
I don't want to talk about the street lights again. Those things still bother me while they're on.
I'm telling you, you just gotta get him the remote access to it.
I
But
don't have the answer for
I
it.
think I brought this up last year, so I'm just curious. I don't know if the thing's on 24 hours a day or not, but at the recycling center, that sign is on, lit and going when it's closed.
It's not supposed to be, I
I asked
assume.
Dave about that, but I don't.
Yeah, I'll follow up with John and Dave.
That seems like an easy fix.
No, I would think 3 streetlights would be too.
I'm
Let's have a
telling you,
source.
I've long been an advocate of getting you like a clapper, just so you can turn it off.
A BB gun's a really easy fix.
Anything else for Mr. Leary this evening?
Something a little bit more.
Seeing none, Mr. Cutter, updates from the school.
Now, there's no material updates from what was already shared last week.
Okay, the updates on our meeting being moved from the 12th to the 13th. Before this group convenes again, we should have a both hard and digital copy of the school budget for our review. One of the things that we should discuss that we have not, and this is probably the best time to do it. In the past, I think part of the process that we have used is leveraging some sort of a Google Sheet to capture questions. So I would say if the expectation is the budget committee is going to get this middle of next week,
Yeah.
as questions start to come in, I think we should create a collaborative document that those can be captured. And we've got them all in one place so that the superintendent, the BA, the school board, budget committee can all see those.
How about
I think
this?
that's a part of our process that's worked well over the
I
last
have
2 or
the
3 years.
budget committee questions sheet from last year. Why don't we just use the same one?
Perfect. Thank you. Any-
Reshare it because I'm actually
yeah.
now more adept at Google Classroom.
Any questions for Mr. Cutter this evening? Member input, new business, school facilities, Miss Douglas.
Was it last night already? It's been a week.
It was yesterday.
Oh, yeah, so,
2 days ago.
dude, it's been like meetings all week. It's awful. Quit this line of work for a reason. So, they met last night. One of the conversations had to do with the surveys. I believe the conversation was they are going to work on direct mailers. It sounded like it was more of a go. At least the conversation sounded like they were planning to do them.
Yeah.
Like they had
I mean, the
approval.
board authorized it, right?
Right, so, because there has been a concern about getting into the homes of people who are not affiliated with the school, who are not on Facebook, who are not doing those things.
We want everyone to have a
The
shot.
best way to do it is to get into their mailbox. So they're gonna send they were working on designing it, getting it ready to get ordered up and sent out. Concerned about whether or not it's gonna get mixed in with unfortunate election.
I was just gonna say, the timing is terrible because.
I
that's up
suggest they
out of
land in the mailbox, you
$50.
know, like the day or 2 days after the election, so it's not, but
I know this isn't in our purview, but I think that is an excellent point because I haven't finished watching that meeting from yesterday, but about the part that I stopped, the discussion was that I believe what I heard said was the survey collection is expected to end on election day, with culminating with a presence there at CHS.
I think it's a couple days after,
Here,
but
I mean, no surprise to anybody here, right? The board is trying to gather information for potential warrant articles, right?
Right.
We need to have that information to inform us by December.
Right.
Right, and that's the rub, and that's what we're trying to work towards.
Right. So they're up to, I think, what is it, 560 as of last night?
I heard there was a big push when Mr. Brennan
Yeah, so they got up to 560. They had
cross-posted on
like
what's up.
there's like 200 or 300 filling it out, and they in that timeline.
Potential
I don't know how many paper ballots are sitting in a box waiting to be picked up, so there's a possibility for that. So, but there is a push for it. There are going to be mailers out, opportunities for everybody to answer the survey. Hoping that I believe the plan was put Litchfield right across the front of it so that it would catch the eye enough that you wouldn't immediately throw it in the trash. But I get it. Look, I get it. It's not a good time for more mailers. I get it. But it is what it is.
Would there be a possibility of coordinating with the town and school and putting it in with the sample ballot and voter guide?
Well, there is no voter guide this
The
time
voter
around.
guide goes until.
It's March,
Oh, that's
February.
Because this is a federal election.
Sorry, you're right. Sorry.
February, we go to print.
So,
I think asking Mr. Brennan to do another bump
right.
will help generate a little bit. But I agree with you. Like, the goal of the survey is to get it in the hands of as many people as possible by as many means as possible.
Yep.
And the timing isn't great because of all the election flyers that are out there,
But
but
it is what it is.
we have to.
Have to try.
Yeah.
Yep. So at least there has been a push for that. There was, the committee is a little without the actual results and analyzing the results, it's kind of at a stalemate as to what to look at. Lots of opinions and lots of debate about which one should be looked at, but until we have information, they did hire, I believe you hired a consultant, On-Site Insight, to do another review of the buildings,
Yeah.
which will be an update of the H.L. Turner report with a little more, hopefully more current information, more expansive information, state of the building, what it would look like to do various repairs and renovations,
For all three buildings.
which, again,
Yeah.
which we've done in the past, so it's, hopefully something happens with this one.
So you're expecting something on the warrant for March?
Not in terms of a new building or a renovation to
Right.
GMS, but something that, I mean, we're fully anticipating GMS's roof we know is 30
Yes.
years old, right? There's, like, we're fully anticipating something needing to be corrected.
Yep.
We're using all of this intel to inform us on what that something is.
Right. Yep, so depending on what the results of the survey are, then they'll start looking at what does the data mean? Is there a clear path? Is there 2 or 3 paths to look at? Are there some options we can just kill? Like, so that's one of the things that they're looking
If
at.
it indicates a clear path to a new school, are you saying that that would appear in March?
No.
Okay, that would be the following year if,
The FIC definitely needs more time to formulate a plan and to run with multiple different options.
I think
before
there's,
we're ready for that.
I think there is a feeling of
That's what I
tying the survey results with but not overshadowing the past warrant vote either, because that was a townwide survey. We can't control who responds to an individual group survey. So if it's not quite so there's gonna be some analysis of that. There's gonna be like, what does it mean? Where do we go from here? That's the next big step.
But I mean, while we're on the school topic, right, that being said, we can't be immune to the fact that Griffin has continued needs that are continuing to be
Understood,
punted,
yeah.
right? And so I think in the budget, I haven't seen the budget, but we're probably, I would expect to see some items in that budget that are replacement items that we haven't seen before because, well, we've been waiting. And guess what? Well, we're at the point where we have to start fixing some things.
And that was
Any-
a point that I brought up last meeting, was that another year's gone by and nothing's been done to the school.
I'd like to just see that ditch
Any,
cleared out again.
any questions for school facilities?
So just things like carpets, right? I mean, like carpets with kindergartners that haven't been replaced in years.
Okay,
Windows, things like that.
And, John Brunel just chimed in on Brian's question about the light. It's on from 7 AM to 8 PM.
it's 8:43.
The sign.
Do a drive-by.
The sign at the dump. Yeah.
But like on days that they don't open till noon, or they close at noon.
It's on every day, it's on a timer.
But if it's programmable, they should be able to change it to the hours,
Not being on Monday and Tuesday.
or not turning on till noon, or whatever the days are, or turning
fact,
How much
you're only
extra electricity are we paying for this sign to be run when the dump is not open?
Dude, what?
Moved on from that.
Listen, we're so far over the tax cap that every penny.
Capital,
So it goes on at 7 o'clock in the morning. We
I
only
know the
open one
sign's
day at
LED
7.
and everything, but.
It's-
Capital Improvement Planning Committee, any updates?
Not really. We met to start categorizing as far as priorities. Unfortunately, the school is not ready, and there'll be a while before they are, so I think we have like 2 urgent items that we identified, and that is recycling parking lot as far as the paving and the new police department. So we're still waiting on the school.
And I know, I think I asked this question 2 weeks ago when I was here. The plan is to present that to the Board of Selectmen when? Or is that being punted on?
Our next meeting is the 21st, and
Yes, so the planning board is going to hold a public hearing, which is required, the first Tuesday in December, and then, Chair Croto will present to the Board of Selectmen December 9th, their first meeting in December.
And then we're
Does
reviewing
make it,
warrant articles on December
it
16th.
makes it extremely hard, but we will make it happen, that we have them to you by December 13th, that Friday before your meeting.
That's why I asked that question. I was just backing
It is.
out of that.
well, that's what we
Date.
did the other night. and
Yeah.
So we need like 10 days to post. I think we're down to like, we got like extra 45 minutes to post them after the meeting. Kim's gonna run around just like.
Thank you. Questions for capital improvement? Seeing none, I'll open it back up for public input this evening. Seeing no one here, we'll close public input. Our next committee meeting, as I mentioned earlier, as a budget committee, is actually Thursday, November 14th. But in between now and then, we have 2 joint sessions with the school board that are led and facilitated by the school board. The first of those on Thursday, November 7th. The second of those on Wednesday, November 13th.
And is it gonna
Fire
start
department, right?
earlier because it's a school board meeting?
Mr. Cutter, can you confirm the start time for the 7th and the 13th?
I believe it's accommodating the budget committee, start time 7 PM, but let me confirm that.
6:30 is so hard.
Where at? Fire station.
Fire station, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Burke? Oh, did you have a comment? No. Sorry. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Motion by Ms. Douglas, second.
Yeah, Mr.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Sorry.
Mr. Leary, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries 8-0-0. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Karen, Kim, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. Thanks for your hard work.